Imagine for a moment that one of the most enigmatic figures of our era is already among us, influencing decisions and shaping the future, without us even realizing his real intention. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, may be much more than just an influential businessman. Could he be the Antichrist himself, the central figure of ancient biblical prophecies, who brings with him veiled signs of a new world order? There are those who say yes, pointing to their global actions as silent evidence of a prophetic power emerging before our eyes. When we look at Scripture and current events, the connection is almost inevitable. Kushner stands out not only as a diplomat who promoted unexpected agreements in the Middle East, but also as an influencer in areas of technology, with deep connections to Silicon Valley and a well-known symbol, the famous Building 666. Could this all be a coincidence? Or could we be facing a much bigger plan, something that only those attentive to details could see? The truth is that the signs are there, spread across every geopolitical event, every technological investment, and, of course, behind the scenes of global power. Have you ever considered that perhaps the Antichrist will not come as an overtly threatening figure, but rather as a charismatic leader, someone who appears to have the solutions everyone wants? The answers may lie between the lines of recent history, in the agreements signed, in the silent movements, and in the alliances made. But are we prepared to see who is really behind these curtains? Follow with me this in-depth analysis of a possible prophetic disguise that has been changing the course of time, and discover why so many people are convinced that the Antichrist is already among us. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, is a figure shrouded in mystery and speculation. For some scholars of biblical prophecies, he could very well represent the figure of the Antichrist. This may seem a bit exaggerated, but his political and economic actions raise a warning for those who look for signs in sacred texts. Just remember the role that Kushner played in several international negotiations, mainly involving the Middle East, a region always full of biblical and spiritual symbolism. In fact, the figure of the Antichrist, described in the scriptures, is that of a charismatic leader, someone who conquers the hearts and minds of people, acting as if he brings definitive solutions to insoluble problems. Kushner is not a traditional politician, which makes him even more intriguing to those who watch the world stage closely. Not only did he become a peace broker, but he was also behind major initiatives that somehow fostered unexpected alliances. For many, his ability to negotiate and influence brings a touch of danger disguised as diplomacy. And when we look at the current narrative, it is impossible not to notice how Kushner's profile fits so many of the characteristics attributed to the Antichrist in the prophecies. He is young, ambitious, and seems to have influence far beyond what one would expect for someone his age. And even more curious is how their movements intertwine with global events that seemed prophesied millennia ago. But of course, this is just the beginning of a story, much more complex, involving not only its political role, but also the biblical references behind it. Are we facing a prophetic figure in action? Biblical scriptures bring disturbing descriptions of the figure of the Antichrist, a leader who, at first glance, will appear to bring peace and stability to the world. According to the narratives of the apocalypse, this figure will have an almost supernatural persuasive power, capable of uniting nations and manipulating masses. Jared Kushner, with his direct involvement in Middle East peace negotiations, resonates strongly with this description. The signing of the Abraham Accord in 2020 is a clear example of its ability to promote what appears to be a scenario of temporary peace. Imagine a figure who, even without having an official position as head of state, exerts influence over high-level global decisions. This is a characteristic that fits perfectly with the biblical descriptions of the Antichrist. Furthermore, the scriptures warn about the deceptive nature of this leader, someone who will seduce the powerful and common with promises of a better future. Kushner, in turn, is seen by many as a moderating force, but the intentions behind his actions are the subject of conspiracy theories that associate him with end-time prophecies. The Bible, especially in the book of Daniel and Revelation, makes several allusions to the coming of a leader who will create an illusory peace, which will then collapse into even greater conflicts. Jared Kushner, promoting peace as a prominent public figure, has become the center of debate, fueling the belief that something deeper may be at play. It's as if your every movement was a chapter being written in an already announced narrative. But of course, this international influence is just one piece of the puzzle. There is still other intriguing evidence that connects his figure to the prophecies. Jared Kushner has become a central figure in several diplomatic negotiations, especially those linked to the Middle East. Its influence is not limited to just representing American interests, but to trying to shape a new order for the region. He promoted the Abrahamic Accords in 2020 as an attempt to resolve crises that seemed insoluble. This performance, in itself, places him in a position similar to that described in the scriptures as the leader capable of bringing momentary peace to the world, but who in reality hides hidden intentions. In fact, its ability to deal with highly complex issues and mediate between historically rival nations demonstrates a power that few possess. For many, Kushner's figure is, at the same time, enigmatic and intriguing. Not only was he successful in promoting peace between Israel and some Arab countries, but he also positioned himself as a negotiator above any traditional leader. This global influence, in the context of the prophecies, is what makes his figure even more peculiar, as if each of these actions were a piece that fits into the prophetic figure of the Antichrist. Furthermore, his entry into international power scenes without the formal political experience of other leaders places him on an unlikely pedestal as someone who appears out of nowhere to transform realities. For those who follow the prophecies closely, this only reinforces the idea that a world leader would come from an unexpected context, enchanting the world with his solutions. However, this is just another piece of the puzzle, and there are even deeper signs, like the famous 666 building, that take these theories to another level. The acquisition of Building 666 on Fifth Avenue in New York by the Kushner family has sparked numerous conspiracy theories. The number 666 is unmistakably associated with the Antichrist, according to the book of Revelation. Many look to this coincidence as further proof that Jared Kushner may be the central figure of biblical prophecy. The building number itself becomes, in the eyes of theorists, a symbol of direct connection with the events described in the Bible about the end of times. For those who believe in the prophecies, the possession of a building with such an obvious connection to the number of the beast cannot be just coincidence. The location in New York, a center of global power and influence, further reinforces these speculations. Some suggest that this building is more than just a piece of Kushner's real estate empire. Perhaps it is a strategic point to implement his control and influence, similar to what one would expect from an Antichrist figure. This is an element that, for many, brings an even more sinister layer to the narrative. Although, of course, purchasing a building can be just an investment like any other, the spiritual context surrounding the number 666 creates an aura of mystery and speculation about its true intentions. For sign seekers, every detail counts, and it's hard to ignore the symbolic connotation of this property. But that's not all. There are other connections, such as growing technological advancement and Kushner's ties to Silicon Valley, that seem to align with prophetic aspects related to future global control. Jared Kushner has deep ties to Silicon Valley and prominent technology leaders, which sparks even more curiosity about his role on the global stage. Technology is often mentioned in modern interpretations of Scripture as a possible tool for the mark of the beast, a symbol of total control over society. Kushner, with his connections in the development of emerging technologies, appears to be at the center of this potential transformation, promoting innovations that could be seen as beneficial or even dangerous. Some of these technologies, such as facial recognition, artificial intelligence, and even surveillance systems, are seen as instruments that could be used for a form of global control. It is curious how many of these tools, although presented as advances that make life easier, end up having the potential to limit individual freedom, something that would be expected in an apocalyptic scenario. And Kushner, as someone with the ability to mediate between the government and the technology industry, becomes a key figure in this narrative, a kind of bridge between political power and technological innovations. This connection to Silicon Valley only increases the suspicions of those who see him as a perfect candidate for the role of Antichrist. After all, a figure who seeks to unite political power, economic influence, and technological control could be a precursor to the establishment of the mark of the beast. But, of course, this is just a hypothesis based on the signs that some choose to see, and these signs become even more intriguing. When we look at the numbers surrounding Kushner's life, like the infamous 666, and pivotal events like the Abraham Accords, numbers have always played an important symbolic role in various prophecies, and in the case of Jared Kushner, this could not be different. The number 666, widely associated with the Antichrist, became a central point in discussions, especially as it was related to the building acquired by Kushner in New York. This detail seems to be another link in the theory that points to his figure as a potential candidate to fulfill the ancient prophecies. For those who believe in such signs, nothing that happens is free from hidden meaning. Furthermore, the year 2020 also brought important milestones, such as the signing of the Abraham Accord, promoted by Kushner, in which many consider a significant movement in the geopolitics of the Middle East. This event is seen as an attempt to create peace, but at the same time, many see it as the illusory peace mentioned in Revelation, which would be established before an even greater collapse. End quote. This year appears to have been a watershed year, not just for the region, but for the way the world began to look at Kushner. As someone who seems to always be at the center of global change. Another point worth mentioning is Kushner's age, 43 years old. His youth is not only a reflection of his ambition, but also of his ability to influence global political spheres at an age when many are still seeking to consolidate their careers. For those who analyze these aspects carefully, youth, associated with his position of power, reinforces the image of a charismatic and influential figure, capable of commanding major changes. And while the numbers and events fit into this narrative, what remains now is to analyze where this could all lead, especially when considering the uncertain future and the prophecies that seem to be taking shape. And now, given all these points, it is up to you to reflect. Are we really prepared to face reality? We are living in an era where the pieces seem to be moving faster than we can keep up, and Jared Kushner may be one of those key players who, without us realizing it, is shaping the destiny of the world. Whether he is the Antichrist or not, we may never know for sure, but the signs and prophecies are there for anyone who wants to pay attention. What are you willing to do with this knowledge? Will you continue to watch from afar, or will you take action to better understand what goes on behind the scenes of power? The answer may not be simple, but this is a reflection that each of us needs to face. And remember, knowledge is the first step to change, and the only way to be ready for what's to come is to stay informed and attentive. So, if you want to continue learning more about these events, about the prophecies, and how they unfold in our era, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Together, we will discover the truths that no one else is willing to tell and prepare ourselves for what the future holds.